starting off, how has the current political climate been affecting your emotional well-being?
Um, I think for the most part, it really hasn't, and I think that has to do just with my mindset and my frame of reference. I think I'm very much of a person like it really at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's in political office, that I'm in control of my life and opportunity still exists for me regardless of who is in office. And but that's me like personally. And then wide spectrum. I think right now, unfortunately, we're not very good on either end. There's too much extremes. We need to be a lot more moderate. I'm a moderate person myself. And because we have such extremes are happening, now with Biden, and I don't keep close tabs on either party on what they're doing, but he's having to kind of backtrack on some of his immigration reform. And because immigration reform, it's so intricate. And living in Texas, we see immigration reform in a much different way. And both my parents are from Mexico. They both immigrated. They both came illegally and then naturalized and all those things. Now they're both citizens. So I do understand it. And I feel that because my parents came from Mexico, that I have some voice in it, because some people may be hearing and thinking, well, who are you to say on such things? And my parents did come to give us a better life, but I don't, they didn't have us when we were, they were both by themselves. So they were giving themselves a better future first and then, instilled in that, to us. So with that, there's a lot of families in the border towns whose lives are constantly in danger because of what's going on. And I think that it's really kind of laughable that the amount of immigrants coming in and the amount of damage that's happening, and a lot of people in the national news may not know what's going on. They break into people's homes, they steal vehicles because they're in survival mode. They're not doing it to be harmful to anybody, but because they haven't eaten in a very long time. But what's happening is that those families are living in fear and they can't live their life. Their kids can't be outside playing. And, how is it possible that we can't prevent that from happening? I understand we have a large border, but we've been what in control of the US for how many years now? So part of me just feels like sometimes it's just allowed because we need migrant workers and we need people working those fields. And if we didn't have that, then, my $2 strawberries would be $4 strawberries. I think that's somebody nobody wants to say, like it's just something that I've always thought about. Like immigration has to always kind of happen, illegal immigration, I should say. So, yeah, those are my thoughts. I don't think I've ever said that on a public platform before.
Our next question is kind of similar to that. You are Mexican American, and we know immigration and being so unquote different is kind of like a hot topic in America. So, have you ever been discriminated based on your race? And if so, how has that affected you?
So, growing up in San Antonio, so I won't speak all of Texas, but definitely San Antonio and South Texas, we're a little bit different. We're the majority here, 70%. So, when I hear a lot of people say they never had maybe a teacher of color, I mean, I had a teacher with my same last name 1 year. So, it's not something that I think I felt when I was younger. I think a lot of times it's just more, oh, what is it? Covertly. I think a lot of it is very covertly. I've been in situations where it wasn't really directed at me, but it took me a while to realize that there is still discrimination. And I can't really go into details, but because yeah, I kind of went into detail. That's besides the point, but really just seeing it, and it really opened my eyes recently, and I was like, wow, it does happen, especially the darker you are. And for myself, I may look a little light on screen, but I'm a pretty good medium brown color, and I did deal with that within my own community. In fifth grade, they called me Charcoal China. And, it really hurt my feelings. And it was something that I had to overcome as time went on because it just really made me not feel good. It made me not feel pretty. And it was mostly from within my own community that I was dealing with that. And now that I've gotten older and I don't spend as much time in the sun, I'm sure people probably think like, what are you talking about? You're a nice color. And I mean, I actually love my color. And, I know that I can get pretty brown if I'm outside. But that's besides the point, right? The color of your skin shouldn't determine anything. It's just what you look like. And I'm actually glad that I'm this color because it does look good. Or okay, maybe I'm just full of myself now, but
There are a lot of things that growing up I didn't understand personally. So I have a twin sister, and my parents, when they got together, my dad's mom didn't approve of my mom and dad being together because my dad is white, my mom is Hispanic, and my grandma on my dad's side said that she didn't want mulatto grandchildren. And so, that's not something that I heard about until later, and I didn't understand it. But this whole time growing up, it just made me think like, my Nana would never say that to me after the fact, but learning about it just makes you think a little bit differently and opens your eyes to a lot more. And it's, it can be really hurtful. But coming through and like, I'm happy like with how I grew up and who I am. So no, I definitely understand that. So thank you for sharing that. On to our next question, which is going more of talking about your career. Did you intentionally seek out the behavioral health field, and what have you learned from it?
Yeah. So, no, when I first went into my undergrad, I was a computer science major. I didn't even have any idea, now that I think about it, other than my high school counselor. And I mean, I wouldn't even think that's behavioral health. I mean, it is counseling or career counseling more. Um, and so I went into school to do computer science because that's what I thought I should be doing. I was good at computers and good at math. And I went in and I actually, in retrospect, I was doing just fine, but it was my first year and I made some C's and I thought, okay, maybe this is not what I should be doing. I thought I should be making all A's like I had been. I didn't think that, even though I knew that they talked about, well, students from lower income backgrounds struggle their first years because their schools weren't as rigorous. Even though I knew that, I thought I was special and it wasn't going to affect me. And so my freshman year, I made a 2.3 my first semester and then like a 2.39 or something like that. It was still really low. And so I just changed my major and had no idea that I probably should talk to somebody about my grades or how things are going. I just didn't know. And I couldn't talk to my parents because if I told them I wasn't doing well, they would have been like, well, what are you doing? Like, you must be messing around, not doing what you need to be doing. And partly, I mean, I wasn't partying my freshman year, but partly the other part was that I wasn't applying myself either. Like, I'd go to class and think that I was just going to naturally absorb all the information and make A's. And I didn't. So, I mean, I really just had to learn how to study on my own aside from the classes because I thought that I could just show up and make good grades. And I think once I found my niche that I enjoyed, it was a little bit easier, but I wouldn't say that I would just sit in class and not do anything extra. To kind of talk about like how I ended up in behavioral health, part of it was I took a psychology class. I really loved hearing about how we develop. I think at the time there wasn't a big trauma focus. So they didn't have that. That came later and it's more recent. But there was a lot about like conditioning and how, if you're conditioned to do this, that's why you react in certain ways and why people like the learn helplessness. People learn to be helpless because they've been in an environment that has disempowered them for a very long time. So when I learned about that, it just made everything make a lot of sense in my community. Why people, why battered wives, why my mom stayed with my dad, even though he was abusive. And even though, well, that's another side story. I won't go there. I was going to talk about other stuff. But so then my first job out of college, my first real job, I would say. I was working for a community center and working with what we called out of school youth, but they are high school dropouts, and helping them get their GEDs and either get into the workforce or go to college. And working with them, I knew I wanted to do more. At the time, I was a case manager, and I was okay. I want to go into being an LPC, or counselor. So that's how that kind of unfolded for me.